so great to have you all here for our very first Better Together session. I'm Margot Frank. I've been part of the national leadership team of ECA since 2015. And for 4 of those years, I co-chaired the communications committee. And then last year when ECA decided to make sure that, to commit to doing all our work through the lens of climate equity and justice, I got really excited because it would bring together those 2 issues that I care most deeply about, climate change and social justice. Personally, I've been wrestling with these questions and engaging in conversations about racism and what it means to be white for most of my life, starting during my early teens when I witnessed most of our white neighbors flee to the new suburbs when the first Black families moved into my neighborhood in Dayton, Ohio. And as we've been working on developing these Better Together series, I've just learned so much more. I've discovered inspiring young leaders in the climate justice movement, and I've gotten a new perspective on how my life of privilege is a result of all those communities that have historically been sacrifice zones. So welcome to our first in the series of 7 monthly sessions that will go through December. And today, our first one, we're going to be looking at privilege and bias and how they can impact our climate action work. We will be breaking out into a couple of short breakout rooms, and at various times during the when we're in the large group or when you're in the small group, you'll have the opportunities to share some suggestions or responses using the chat box, which is at the bottom of your screen. If you just click on that, it brings up a box and you can type into that. We ask that you be muted during the large groups and unmute yourself during the small breakout rooms. You know, I'm committed to this work and I'm excited about it. And I know that if ECA and all of us as elder activists don't shift and really start doing climate justice and climate equity work, we're going to be left behind in the climate movement, because that's where everything is going. So now I'm going to pass it to Arnico Brown, who will introduce herself and take us along on our seminar.
Hey, everybody. I hope you're all doing well. My name is Arnico Brown, and I'm the Chapters and Membership Coordinator for ECA. I'm grateful for all of you as active to share this time and space with us, learning about the things that are most important in the work that we do as activists, and just noting that as activists in this work, it's vital to be inclusive of everyone. Without all voices, we won't have all views. With all of the views, we aren't able to make fully informed decisions about our collective work. The goal is to become more informed of who and what we lack in this work. As we connect to who and what we lack, we're able to move toward collective liberation for all. So again, thank you all for being here today and welcome. And I'll pass it to Ms. Jen.
Thank you, Nico. I'm Jen Chandler, and I'm the Director of Operations for Elders Climate Action. And it's so nice to see everyone here tonight and see such a great turnout from our ECA community. So welcome. As climate activists, we want to protect our planet and mitigate the most devastating effects of the climate crisis. However, we must move forward in seeking and implementing solutions to the climate crisis. It is critical that we support solutions that are not disproportionately impacting any one community. Environmental justice communities, mostly BIPOC, Black, Indigenous, and people of color, have been on the front lines of the climate crisis for decades. Ultimately, it's the same polluters that have made these communities sick that are at the root cause of global warming. Over the coming months, we will use this space to build our understanding as a community, collectively unpack our language, and address our own beliefs and perspectives. And we'll strategize ways to ensure equity and justice are central in our personal and collective actions. And we'll explore how to be better allies to BIPOC and frontline communities. As the great Maya Angelou once said, do the best you can until you know better. Then when you know better, do better. Ultimately, we're better when we come together to find ways to protect each other, our children, and our grandchildren, and future generations. So thank you for showing up to be part of the Better Together sessions.
Thank you so much. And I would like to just preface all of these sessions with saying that this is not a deep dive into this, but this is an ability to collect to the language that is being utilized and connect to the communities that aren't here. And so with that, we like to just open it up with asking the question, what is privilege? Take a moment to drop it in the chat box. And as we talk about privilege, we'll highlight some of the answers that we get from you all. So if you have an answer for it, please drop it in the chat box. And we'll give it about 30 seconds, okay? Thank you, Ms. Gloria, for saying exclusive rights. Okay. They're kind of pouring in on me. Born advantage. Oh man, y'all have some of the most amazing responses. Expectation of favoritism. Thank you, Miss Sally, for that. Miss Catherine, special advantages or entitlement used for one's own benefit. Okay, cool. Thank you, Mark. Privilege is not even having to consider it. And you're exactly right. And so I appreciate all of what you guys said. And when I looked it up, all of you are correct, but when I looked it up, it was this definition really embodies all of what you all have stated. It's a special right, advantage, or immunity granted or available to only a particular person or group. So thank you all for sharing in that. And we're going to move right along with it. Yes, Cooper, privilege is having advantages over others. Yes. So I'm glad that you all know what it is. And we're going to move right along to the next slide. And in our next slide, prior to us going into that, we're going to ask that Miss Margot give us, if she doesn't mind, a experience of privilege.
Yeah, I'll give an example. So my father, who was a World War II vet, was able to get a GI loan to buy a home after the war because he was white, a white vet. If he had been a black vet, that wouldn't have been an option for him because he was able to buy a small house and accrue that asset. He was eventually able to help me to buy something when I was an adult. So that was a clear kind of transmission of his privilege right down to me and my daughter.
Okay, cool. I know that, for me, privilege looks like my education and me going to PWIs or predominantly white institutes. And with having like scholarships, I was privileged to go to school without having to pay for my education. So I was definitely privileged in that manner. And so what we're going to do right now, now that you've heard from us, is your turn. So we're going to go into small groups and have a discussion about how are you privileged? And pick one of these in your community, your education, or access. Choose one of the above to share within your breakout group. I'm going to put it in the chat and then you're going to go to your breakout groups, okay?
Okay, I think we're all back in our breakout rooms.
Okay, I'm just going to put in the chat an example of a very short description of how I had privilege in my family. And then I want to invite each of you to also, in a very short, concise way, to, if you want to share your how you were privileged in community education or access, and put that in the chat as well. So I'm just going to read a few of them. Good schools from kindergarten through grad school from Nadine. Educational scholarship opportunities from William Myers. Private school from Ian Harrington. Gloria Mogg says, I lived in segregated, safe part of Detroit and had safe in quotations and had the privilege of being able to go wherever I wanted, whenever I wanted. I bought a house with a GI loan because my husband was a Korean War vet. Grew up upper middle class, but now living on Social Security and part-time work. Took many memorable family vacations and saw most of the US as a child. Thank you all for putting in those ways that you were privileged. And now I'm going to ask you to just in one word, well, I'll pass on to Jen, who's going to explain the Mentimeter and graphic tool we're going to be able to use. And then I would, if I were putting something in there, I would just put in the word housing, because that was where I experienced privilege. So,
to explain the Mentimeter, if you open another screen on your browser or use your cell phone and type and go to a browser, www.menti.com, the website www.menti.com, and enter the code 1630 1211, and I'll repeat that again, menti.com, code 1630 1211. It's at the top of the screen that you see, or top of my screen. You can put in your answer, your one-word answer. Like Margot said, her answer would be housing, and that one-word answer will then show up here on my screen in a big collective word bubble. So it's a good way for us to just kind of see all of our thoughts and ideas in one place and capture that in one place. So in what places do you recognize your privilege? I'll give it a couple more minutes. www.menti.com, 1630 1211. Excellent. And as we can see that as words get bigger, that means that multiple people are using that same word. So a lot of us are using the words education, healthcare, neighborhood, housing, freedom, job opportunity, finances, location of house, retirement, food access, access to nature. Excellent. Wonderful. Thank you. Thank you for joining this word cloud.
Thank you, Miss Margot, and thank you, Miss Jen, for that interactive moment. And so we're going to take a little dive into bias. So just like we did with privilege, give us your definition of what bias is. And again, put it in the chat and I'll read out a couple of them. And then we'll take a bit of a dive into bias. Oh, these are really good. Miss Sally, preconceived notion or assumption. Mr. Ian with beliefs without basis. Miss Erlita, if I'm saying that correct, I hope I am. Racial profiling. Miss Leslie, putting individuals into groups, most definitely. Miss Nancy, making assumptions about another not based on fact or evidence. Oh man, y'all really got them rolling in. Inability to take in great variety of info. And there's so many. Miss Nadine, believing in, how do you say that one?
Meritocracy.
Meritocracy. I thought that's what it was, but I don't have on my glasses. I was assuming. And Miss Florence, beliefs and behaviors toward a group without any data. So all of these are excellent definitions. And of course, you know, I went to the dictionary just so that we would have a clear, concise one. And here it is: prejudice in favor or against one thing, person, or group compared with another, usually in a way considered to be unfair. Another little note about biases, conscious or unconscious, they're not limited to ethnicity and race. They may exist toward any social group, um, anyone's age, gender identity, physical abilities, religion, sexual orientation, weight, and many other characteristics. And knowing that, just taking a little bit of a dive, we're going to talk about conscious and unconscious bias as well. And so the first one we have is unconscious bias. It's also known as implicit bias. This occurs automatically when the brain makes quick judgments, as many of you stated, based on past experiences and background. As a result of unconscious biases, certain people benefit and others are penalized. So, in contrast to unconscious bias, we have conscious bias. With conscious bias is also known as explicit bias. Conscious bias is, in its extreme, is characterized by over negative behavior that can be expressed through physical and verbal harassment or through more subtle means such as exclusion. And so I'm going to pass it to Ms. Margot to give us some examples of either unconscious or conscious bias.
Thanks, Nico. Um, well, an example of conscious bias was years ago when I worked in a domestic violence program. And if we were going to hire someone new, we said, well, we only want to hire someone who fits in the hot tub with us, you know, someone who was just like us. So that was exclusion, conscious bias. And an example of unconscious bias is when I'm walking down the street and I see a group of teenage boys of color walking together, and I immediately notice my heart rate starts to speed up.
Thank you
I'll pass that back. Yeah.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you, Ms. Margot, for sharing those examples. We definitely appreciate them. And what we're going to do now is go to breakout rooms. So, of course, we talked about bias, conscious and unconscious, giving you the examples. So, what we would like for you guys to do is hop into the breakout rooms via Zoom and share an experience of when you've encountered bias or were biased against someone else. And of course, as always, I'm going to drop it in the chat.
Okay, welcome back from your little breakout groups. We hope you had some good short conversations. And now if you want to put in the chat something about that you shared about in your group about when you've either encountered bias or biased against someone else. And then if you want to raise your hand, Nika will call on some people to share something. In fact, if you want to just do that without putting it in the chat, that's fine.
All right, I don't see a hand raised, but I do see where Mr. Ian put dismiss because part of a group of old white men. Miss Gloria, assumption that Black students won't perform at the same level as whites. Miss Gloria, do you care to elaborate on that?
I'm David, and I had taught for a number of years at the college level, and most of the students were white. There were a few Black students in my college teaching experience, and all of them came from substandard high schools. And as a result, they didn't perform as well on the exams. Then at the end of my life or working life, I taught high school. And for the first time, I was teaching in a much more diverse setting. And as a result of that experience as a college professor with students who were ill prepared, I assumed unconsciously that the Black students in my classes were not as well prepared as the white students. And I had lower expectations of them. This was unconscious bias that I didn't realize I had until I'd been teaching for 2 years. And in the third year, we had workshops on race issues. And we had to examine how we thought about our students. And I came to appreciate that my expectations of the Black students were significantly lower than the expectations I had of white students. And that was not good for them, definitely.
Okay. Miss Sally Peterson, if you would elaborate a little more on yours. She said teenager wearing baggy pants and hoodie.
Okay, sorry, I thought I lost you for a second. My example was, I'm a single mom. I raised 2 boys, and they're grown now, but at the time they were teenagers, that was the phase where these kids were always wearing baggy pants and either long shirts or hoodies, and they were always hassled because of the way they looked. And they were good kids there. And I met a lot of their friends, and their friends all dressed the same. And even myself was surprised at how good these kids were, but they just dressed like they were kind of thugs. And, you know, so everybody had a preconceived notion of, you know, what kind of kid they were. So.
Okay, great. So we're gonna move along. Well, first off, thank you all for sharing everything that you've stated. And we talked about bias, the different types of bias. We've shared our experience with bias. But this chart is a chart that I've learned about in my diversity, equity, and inclusion course that I recently completed. And I'm also utilizing this model while I'm doing my master's degree, and it's how to flex on bias. And this talks about how to actually counter bias and basically thinking before you speak on a lot of things. So the F, as you can see, is focus within. So when you focus within, you tune into your emotions, you recognize how your experience has shaped your perspective, you stick to the facts and don't make assumptions, and you turn your frustrations into curiosity. So, in utilizing this in my course, I've had my own biases towards a lot of things. And what I had to do was take myself out of the situation and look at the facts that were at hand and not have a preconceived notion based on who was at the table, what was going on, and how we would deal with it. I had to look at the facts, see the facts, know the facts, understand the facts, and be curious about why this is going on rather than saying, this is this because of this. So, a good example for me is all of the Black Lives Matter movements. Every time a Black person is shot, Black people hop out and they say, hey, you know, we're going to riot, we're going to do this, we're going to do that. But we also have to understand why we're doing this. Why are we doing this every time this happens? Why are we moving in the manner that we're moving? Is there a different way that we can move so that we're not perceived as, Miss Sally, you stated, to be thugs out in the street? Because a lot of people who are part of the movement have baggy clothes. And, you know, for myself, looking, I have arms full of tattoos. And, you know, seeing me as an individual who is working on behalf of other people, I would rather be seen for my work and not seen for what you feel like I represent. Because at the end of the day, we're all human and we all do this work collectively. Um, and another part about it, the L is for learning about others. In that, you recognize how their experiences have shaped their perspectives. Consider how they might see the situation and what is important to them. Think about how your actions may have impacted them. And again, going back to the Black Lives Matter movement, everybody knows that Blacks have been historically oppressed. And in understanding that, don't just see that, oh, they're out there riding again, they're doing this, they're doing that. It's an opportunity to see why they're doing this. And this is an opportunity to become an ally in the work that they're doing, because we're all human and we all deserve a chance. And so just recognizing that that movement is on behalf of people who just want justice in the movement, and seeing how this is important to them, taking time to see them and see the hurt and help where they're hurting is helpful to all humans. Um, the E is for engaging in dialogue, asking open-ended questions, and not just open-ended, but open-minded questions. Being open-minded to the things that they're doing, listening to understand and not debating. Whether you feel like it's right or wrong, people are hurt. People go through things, we all deal with things, and their justification is just as important as your understanding of what they're dealing with. Offering your views without being defensive or combative. When someone is hurt, nobody's right and nobody's wrong. It's a situation that is. And in recognizing that, you also recognize that that place is an opportunity to make a situation better. Um, and another one is to avoid blame and think contribution. So, how can you help the situation? And what can you do that's helpful for the whole? Lastly, the X is for expand the options, brainstorm of possible solutions. So rather than saying this is right, this is wrong, come up with something collectively to make that space better. Be flexible in different ways to reach a common goal. So how can we bring about justice for all? Rather than seeing yourself in it, see everybody. Because what we don't realize a lot of times is the situations are bigger than who we are. And the work that we're doing is collective work across all spectrums. Another one is experiment and evaluate, see what works and what doesn't work. And if it works, adapt it. If it doesn't work, then adapt and do something else. And lastly, seek out diverse perspectives. If you only have, again, as I stated in the beginning, if you only have one voice, that's only one perspective. But if you have more voices at the table, those are different perspectives. Different perspectives bring about an opportunity to have different visions and different voices. And this is how you flex on bias. I know that I went through it rather quickly, but you will receive this diagram. And as I stated, I'm utilizing it in diversity, equity, and inclusion. And I'm also utilizing it in my master's degree that I'm currently pursuing. So after that, we will have Miss Margot. Thank you all for allowing me to share with you how to flex on bias.
Thanks so much, Nico. Listening to that, I thought how these strategies, these ways of working with bias can be helpful for us in so many ways, and with all the divisiveness in our country now. So I want to encourage everyone to just take a few moments for yourself and reflect on how you recognize conscious or unconscious bias, and what you might be able to do to counter unconscious bias. If you have a place to write things down, you can write to reflect on it more later, or just think about it. We'll just give you a few moments of silence here for you to think about all of that for yourselves. I think we have enough time that if anyone wants to just very briefly pop something into the chat box about ways that you can participate in countering bias, you can share a little bit. So I see that William Myers says, make opportunities for those discriminated against. Ask open, Leslie says, ask open questions about why someone had the reactions or made the statement they did. I think this is Sylvia. Just gently challenge what you hear. Ask a question. These are all
What we're
good
doing now
examples.
is having uncomfortable conversations. This is wonderful.
Well, we're going to be tying this up for today. We're glad that you're enjoying this, and unfortunately, we don't have the time for it to be a deep dive. But I want to thank all of you for being part of this today, and look for in your email box. You'll be getting soon a recording of this today's first session, and also a list of some questions and some resources, including articles, podcasts, videos, books, and we want to encourage you between now and when we meet again in a month to read some of those things, look at some of those things. You might want to journal about what comes up. If you're part of a chapter or have a group of people who you can get together with and engage with these questions and look at or engage with some of the resources together, that would be great, and have some conversations about what you're learning. We're putting in the chat box a very short feedback survey. This is the first in our series, and we really want to make sure that what we're offering each month is powerful, effective, and engaging. So please give us some feedback, and visit, of course, our website at eldersclimateaction.org. You can follow us on Facebook and Twitter. You can become a member. And I just want to let you know about some upcoming events. You can register with a group called Mothers and Others for Clean Air. They are doing a training on the history of environmental racism and the environmental justice movement on June 15th. And if you go to their website, Mothers and Others for Clean Air, there's a flyer graphic at the top that you can click on to register. We have our monthly national call on June 22nd, and we will, I think I have the wrong thing in there for what's happening this month. We're gonna have somebody.
No, it is.
It is correct.
Correct.
Okay. Tiffany Fant discussing the red, black, and green New Deal. So that's really going to be an exciting thing. We hope that if you're able to, that you make a donation if this is a benefit to you. ECA is a greatly underfunded and understaffed organization, mostly volunteers, and we rely on the generosity of our members to keep us going. So no donation is too small and no donation is too big. And Jen or Nico, is there anything else you want to add as we finish up here?
I just really want to say thank you to each and every last one of you for coming out and sharing this space with us today. These are, Ms. Arlita said that these are hard conversations, but I always deem them as crucial, because if we say that something is hard, then we're more than likely not going to dive into it. But if we say that it's crucial, that takes away who we are and put our focus on the problem and bring about a bigger solution. So thank you all for being here today. Thank you all for understanding that this is a much needed conversation, and I have enjoyed being with everyone this afternoon. Thank you.
And I'll just add that it's so nice to have everybody here. And I think these sessions, the intention here is that they will build from 1 week or from 1 month to the next month and build upon each other, that we will learn more, walk away with a deeper understanding of ourselves, a deeper understanding of the issues within the climate movement itself, and better ways to actually stand up and take action within our communities and at a global level. So again, thank you so much for everybody for coming out and being part of this. And next month, we'll be talking about inclusivity and allyship, which I think are really critical and important pieces within the climate movement. So thank you for joining us, and thanks for being willing to have these conversations.